You ever heard the term, I feel like my life is a mess? Well, that's no problem at all, because that's the place where God often does his best work, according to George Verwer, who's seen and proven time after time in nearly 60 years of ministry.
George Verwer was 16 years old when his life was radically changed at a Billy Graham meeting. He and his friends sold their belongings and went to Mexico to share their faith. And that's what he's been doing for the past 50 years. Today, his ministry has raised up nearly 7,000 leaders in 118 countries. Their ships have docked in hundreds of ports in 151 countries. Millions of visitors have boarded these floating book fairs and left with much-needed resources to share their faith.
Well, George is here with us right now. You coined a term, messiology. Well, what kind of messes are out there, George?
Well, for 60 years, I've been following the Lord, first to Mexico and then to about 100 different countries. Spoken about 20,000 churches, Pat.
Good.
And pretty well everywhere I've looked, there's some kind of mess. Fortunately, many of them are quite small.
Yeah.
So I always read the book of Proverbs that you quoted from already today. And so I wrote my own proverb, where 2 or 3 of the Lord's people are gathered together, sooner or later there's a mess. But messiology was really God rescuing me, because some of the mistakes that I saw Christian leaders make, and that I made some, the devil was trying to get me cynical about it, especially in the senior years. And he gave me this word, messiology, which is simply his part. And so I've seen how even in messy churches, they may have some funny doctrines, they may do some, even their leader may have problems. Who doesn't have problems? God keeps working. God worked during segregation. God worked during when we were practicing slavery. We don't understand that, but that's really exciting, and I write about it in my new book.
Well, you were tremendously critical of other people at one time in your life, weren't you? And you've learned a lot from that. What have you learned?
Yeah, I think when I was young, I was radical. I was outspoken at a very high level of what I felt was integrity and total honesty and godliness. I read all these books, Tozer, very high standard. So when I didn't see that standard in others, and to be honest, often on Christian television, I was quite critical, and God just broke me, and this rethinking of the way God works. And a promise that no one hardly ever talks about, but it's clear in the Bible. We're all going to sin until we're in heaven. You know, the less the better, but nobody's going to be perfect down here.
What's your book? Let's talk about it.
Well, this is the British edition. You've got it there. More drops to follow up on that book that you held in your hand 10 years ago, Drops from a Leaking Tap. But the American publisher, Moody Press, because this book is a number of themes. The main theme is messiology. So the American edition coming in April, I'll send you one. It's called Messiology.
Messy.
Yeah.
Well, you think everybody has some messes? All the Christians have messes?
I think everybody sins, and sin creates a mess. Sometimes it's very small, not even noticed. Like, God has really dealt with me about my attitude. So I think wrong attitudes, judgmentalism, and I'm reading a book called Extreme Righteousness that shows that it's hard to be a person like me, so strong on the Bible. It's hard to be someone like me and not have a Pharisee streak. So now there's a new book called Pharisectomy. I've just started to read. I just started to read that one. So I talk about these things in my book.
I hope I don't get one cut out of me, whatever that is. Pharisectomy.
Extraction of Phariseeism in our lives.
Yeah, right. Why? I mean, the average church, there's no such thing as a perfect church, is it?
That's for sure. And many people have left the church. Surveys show many have left the church altogether. I've just read an article of another person, quite a well-known person, has completely thrown over the Christian faith. And my research shows that sometimes it's because they just see dysfunction. They see what they call hypocrisy. Now, that may be partly true, but I think they have a wrong view of God. We're all human. We all fail. He works in the midst of that, not excusing anything that's wrong, but giving his side.
Yeah.
And we need to be more grace-awakened, less critical of our pastors. So many pastors They get roasted even for small things, much less their dear wives. So I'm getting a lot of feedback from this book. People really encouraged.
Well, it must be tough. I mean, people, the ladies of the church come into the parsonage and look under the beds to see if the lady of the house cleans her floors the way she should. I mean, it's really tough.
I can give you 100 stories at least of pastors' wives and mission leader wives.
Well, give us a couple. One of them, anyhow.
Well, you know, here was a woman that was buying things a little more than some of the people in the church thought she should be spending, and so they started gossiping about her, and, you know, became a messy situation. And then I think of a particular pastor who had the courage to confess he was struggling with pornography, and he confessed it as his marriage was holding together. But one of these Pharisee types, boy, they just went for him. They managed to split the church. They managed to get him out of ministry. I'll never forget that.
What happened to him, finally?
Well, fortunately, he's going on. His marriage is still going on, but he never got back into pastoral ministry. That church never fully really recovered. So I'm hoping such people will read my book.
Well, what's the hope for you? What you got going next?
Well, I'm off to Scotland this weekend.
Really?
But the most exciting thing in my life is they've done this film about my life story called George for Real. I never thought this would come out. 18 hours of footage. And yet the editor put it together, 55 minutes. It's for young people who don't read my books. 1 million of my books are out there. And so I'm looking for young people to read this, to watch this film.
Pictures of this ship. Talk about the ship.
Well, we have just the one ship now, a much bigger ship called the Logos Hope. It's going really well. We've had 5 million visitors in 8 years.
Good grief.
And I'm always out there looking for recruits. I took 275 meetings last year looking for recruits.
Great.
And we're still waiting for you to visit our ship. We've had a lot of famous people visit our ship, but you haven't got there yet.
Where is it so I'll know where to find it?
Well, it's in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Well,
you can't get there this afternoon. But we're coming this way. We're coming this way.
I'll call my pilot and get over there. No, I don't. That's great. Well, George, it's so good to have you, and I hope this book is a marvelous success like everything else you've done. More drops in...
and not everything I've done has been a success, that's for sure.
There are a few messes along the way.
That's another favorite book of mine, Failure, the Back Door to Success. I've never read the book, but the cover really spoke to me.
I'm sure it will. Well, George, his book you want to get a copy of. And we leave you with today's Power Minute from Proverbs. The name of the Lord is a strong tower.
Love it.
The righteous run to it and are saved.